I see a lot of people asking questions around triads. They seem to cause a lot of confusion, primarily with beginners, but also with people who've been playing for a longer time. So the good news is, if you can play open position chords, if you're already familiar with, your A, C, D, those ones, you can play triads. You already understand. Well, one, you already are playing some of the shapes, but two, you understand how to make them. In terms of why to use them, they really just give you so much more freedom along the fretboard, because they're the same chords that you're already playing, but in different voicings. So in particular, if you're in a 2 guitar band and one of you is down here in the open position or playing bar chords, the other one could be playing triads. You get the same chords but just played in a different voicing. A really nice way of creating melodies. They're also a really nice way to think of approaching lead lines and solos, because instead of just running up and down scales, you're thinking more about the chords being used, the chord changes, the melodies. And they also just really help with your learning of knowing where the notes are, because if you learn triads the right way, you're going to learn, one, where the notes are on the board, because you need to know where the note is to know what chord you're playing, and two, you will also at the same time learn the intervals. So if you can find the root note, you'll be able to find the 3, the 5, and from there the other intervals as well. So let's dive into this. So let's look at the start with the C chord. So I'm assuming everyone watching this video knows the C chord. So we taught this as a 5-string chord. We don't normally play the low E, but we do play the other 5 strings. So before we can work out how to do a triad here, let's look at the scale. So major chords are 3 specific notes from the major scale: the 1, the 3, and the 5. So the C major scale: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, C. 2, 3, that's over here, right? The E. 4, 5, G. So 1, 3, 5. Any major scale is built the same way. You take the 1, the 3, and the 5 from the major scale. So C, well, the 1 is obviously here. This is our C. Okay. The 3 is down 1 string and towards the nut 1. This is our 3 or our E. Now the open string is the G. So normally we play C like this, but you can play as a triad by just playing these 3 strings, open G. Now we can extend this even further. We said the G, the open G, is one of the notes, okay? But we also have a G here. So we can play as a triad. This is 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret. Okay, that's a C major triad, but if you look closely, it's just the E major shape. But you can put it up on this, okay? So we've now extended the C to have the low E fretted. And now look at this chord. You may not want to play that whole thing, but now we've broken this down into actually different triads. So we've got this one we just played. Now if we don't play the low E, yeah, next 3 strings. So again, now we're the position of C, so now we can remove this finger, play these 3 strings. And now you can remove that finger and play the top 3 strings. So that is open, 1, open, which really, if you think about it, is the D shape. Okay, if you take the open D shape, slide it back, that's your C triad. Now what that means is, if you know that's a C major triad, the D major triad is the D chord that we normally play, but you don't play the open D string here. Well, that means you can just keep sliding that up. That's an E, F, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and so on. So if you're playing these open chords, well, we've just established that the D major open chord and the E major open chord are 2 triad shapes that you can just, along the appropriate strings, you can just move that anywhere. And we've also seen that the C major chord here can be played in a few different ways without going anywhere. Okay, so this gives us a clue into how we can do this elsewhere on the fretboard. So that's how you do it with the C major shape, and you can move that anywhere. Okay, so if we, as I've shown in another video, you can move the C major shape, chord shape, as long as you account for that open string. So instead of moving it along like that, we just adjust the fingering and make sure that we fret where the open string would be. So now we can just do these as triads. Let's go from those two strings and the next two. Okay. And so the root note in that is obviously the same place where the C is. It's this finger and this finger. To A string and the B string. In the C shape, C chord shape, those are the two root notes, and the 3 is right next, down and down one string, down one fret. Now when you see people teaching triads, it can look like you've got 1,000 different shapes to learn. You know, you'll see people playing. Okay, but actually, these are shapes you already know. If you like, we've just looked at the open chords there. You can see the C shape, the E shape, the D shape that most people know very early on in learning to play the guitar. The downfall that we have is we're rarely taught how those chords are made. So we've looked at the 1, 3, 5. You can take those 3 notes to make any major scale, and therefore, sorry, any major chord, and therefore they're triads elsewhere. So we said C major is C, E, G. If you find those 3 notes anywhere on the fretboard, that's a C major triad. So another way you can look at the other shapes is if you know your E shaped bar chord. So let's have a look. This is A, okay, 5th fret. So here's a triad. Here's another one. Yeah. So you might think, oh, that's a handful of new shapes you have to learn, but you don't, because you know this chord. So you take the top 3 strings, looks like this. Okay, so this is A, right? So that's the A, that's the root. The 5 is directly above it, and the 3 is above and to the up 1 fret. So this is where understanding the fretboard comes in, because if you're familiar with power chords, yeah, just these 3 strings here, you probably know this is the 1, the 5, and the octave. So these 2 strings are the same, and this is the 5. So this shows us that the 5 sits on top of the 1 or the 8. It's the same note. So the same thing happens down here with this triad. Our root note is here, so we know the 5 is directly above it. And so the 3 is just here. Okay, so remember, this is just the top part of that bar chord. So the next triad is here. These middle strings. So now, this is the same as what we've just done. We've just moved this very top string here, because they're the same note again. And these triads, just, you can remove the top note and put it on the bottom, and then you just keep cycling that up. Okay, so we've gone from here to here. It's the same chord, but you can hear already different voicing. So now, this was our root here. We've moved this note here, so now our root is here. And this is the 1, the 3, the 5. So now we can move this note. We want to find the octave of this. It's here. So we leave these 2 fingers, we move this one up here, change the fingering. It's just that E major shape again. E major chord here, slide it up to here. Okay, so we've got the E major. So now we're going to leave these 2. We're going to move the note that's at the bottom of this triad. And where's that octave? So that is, there it is, here in the 9th fret. So we had the E major shape. We're going to keep these 2 fingers here, just adjust the fingering for it however you're most comfortable. These 2 and here. Okay, so those are all ways of playing A major. Easy. So we can do it with the C shape. Okay, you move that C shape up, adjust the fingering. You know where the triads are from here. We've just looked at that. You know where they are in the E shape bar chord. And then of course there's the A shape bar chord, which is your roots now on the A string, the 5th string. Then you bar these middle 3, and then down here. So this one's a bit different. Because the root note's on the A string, it's not also down here. So here, the root is in the G string. Now this is just your open A position chord. Okay, so what you normally play here, however you play it, you should know that the root note is in the middle of those three fingers. Okay, these are the three fingers. It's here on the G string. So again, we've just discussed that the 5 sits on top of the root, so that means the 5 is here on the D string and the 3 is here on the B string. So back here. So the root's on the A string, that means we're playing D major. So the root's here. Root 3, 5. So you want to move that one, cycle it up. It would be here. This is just your open A position shape. Okay, so now we want to move this top one up. So where would we find that? Well, that one's actually over here. Now we can't play that as that's a bit of a, and you could do it, it's a bit of an awkward one. So you just find that somewhere else. Okay, so it's here. 9, 7, 7. Now remember, we had that same shape just down here earlier. Okay. That's it. So you can see these shapes. You can use the shapes. There's no harm in knowing the shapes in the same way that you learn chords as shapes. But what's really beneficial here is if you know which one has the root note. Because if you know where the root note is, you know what to play. You can't just play and know that's a major chord, but not know what chord it is. Because if you're playing or you're trying to write songs or you're playing with someone else, you need to know what chord you're playing. And then hopefully you've realised from here how easy it is to find the 3 and the 5. If you know the roots here, the 5 is directly above it, the 3 is this way beneath it. Of course, there's the B string tuning trap. So depending on what you're trying to play, you may need to move up or down one. But generally, that's all there is to it. So a really good way to practice this is to take a chord and play it different places along the neck. So you've got your open E. So that's D sharp. I did that wrong. Let's have a look. Okay, you just go along. Find as many as you can, and don't try and do every note, every chord, every key. Just pick 1, pick 2, and just cycle through them until you get comfortable with them. But you can remember the shapes. You've got your E shape on these. This set of 3 strings, the next set of 3 strings, this shape. Okay, you can do that. You've got your A, you've got your D. You need to remove the open strings for these. You've got your open C. You can break that down into. A bit better. And your chords, your bar chords. So that's triads, and of course to turn these into minors, we've already identified the 3. So let's take this chord really quickly. This one. So with the root here. So the root's here. The 5 is above it. That means this is the major 3. If you wanted to make this a minor chord, just move that 3 down 1 fret. So just stack them directly on top of each other, which is the same shape as the A major shape, right? If you play it down here, it's a minor chord. Again, it's just that tuning trap on the B, so you can account for that. But that is intervals in a nutshell. You probably know the shapes already from the chords. You already know it's just unlocking that information, realizing that your fingers know more than your brain realizes they know, and then putting the time in to learn where the 3 intervals sit within those triads. Where the root note is in each shape. So if you come back here really quickly, these are the same chord. They're the same chord, and you haven't even got to move across the neck to play them. So it's just put the time in to learn how they sit under your fingers, which one has the root, and then that gives you the freedom to move anywhere. And by extension of doing that, you'll learn the notes of the fretboard without sitting there and manually thinking, right, okay, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's more functional to learn the notes as part of music. And the same when you learn these chords, you learn this was a C chord, this was a D chord. You learn the name at the same time. Now we're just filling in these gaps. So you know this is a C chord, but you probably don't know this is the third, the open string is the 5, this is a repeat of the root, and so on. And that's all there is to it.